Anslem's dedication to his craft has been recognized, with him winning the Best Caribbean Style Artist at the 2014 Black Canadian Awards. Importantly, he actively uses his music as a platform to raise awareness on social issues, exemplified by his single Break That Cycle, which addresses the destructive impact of domestic violence on families and society as a whole. Now we're getting into it. Hello, folks. Welcome to Season 9's Trin Corn series, brought to you by the Trinidadian Consul General of Trinidad and Tobago, Mr. J. Andre Laveau. I'm Ozzy Stewart, as you know, and very grateful that you've tuned in to this thank you tour of mine, giving flowers to deserving impactors within the Trinidadian diaspora. Please like, follow, subscribe, share, drop a comment, and support us by checking out our store's merch or on our donate page, or become a member on our new members page to our after show called Inside the Call. And on this episode, I'm shining light on Mr. Anslem Douglas. Before we bring Anslem in, I have to let you know who he is. In long form, yes. Anslem Douglas is a talented musician, performer, composer, songwriter, and author. He gained widespread recognition for his hit single, Doggie, which later became popularized by the Bahamian junkanoo band Baha Men as Who Let the Dogs Out? Born and raised in the vibrant village of Romaine in southern Trinidad, Anslem developed a passion for music at a young age, honing his skills by singing the local Pentecostal Church. And so he performed in front of receptive audiences worldwide after that, such as Canada, England, Israel, Sweden, the States, of course, Zimbabwe and Antigua. At the age of 16, he formed a band called Exodus with some of his church friends. However, his musical journey took a slight detour when he enlisted in the Trinidad and Tobago Coast Guard in 1984, serving for 6 years. During his time in the Coast Guard, Anslem had the opportunity to perform with the Coast Guard band, further deepening his musical abilities. And after leaving the Coast Guard, he became acquainted with soca. And for those who don't know, look it up. Trinidad's native genre, and began performing with local bands such as Fireflight and Atlantic. It was during this period that he composed several notable songs, including Good Music to Dance and the Grammy-winning hit single, Who Let the Dogs Out? Residing in Canada. Throughout his career, Anslem has showcased his versatility by venturing into various genres. In 2012, he released his self-written album, Project AD, a fusion of neo-soul and pop, produced by Eddie Bullen and his son Quincy Bullen. In 2013, Stick Fight. 2014, Too Sweet. He continued to release singles in subsequent years, including Do You Think He Will Understand, a power soca track, Bacchanal, a neo-calypso single, and Dancing With You, a classic 60s rhythm collaboration with Lil Bits. He's been working on an album which fuses R&B, soul, smooth jazz, and pop, with 9 of the 11 tracks written by himself and produced by renowned Brazilian-American guitarist Sandro Albert in New York City. With a rich musical background and a passion for making a difference through his music, Anslem Douglas continues to captivate audiences with his soulful compositions and powerful performances. And you should see what's coming up next. How has your upbringing in La Romaine, which is San Fernando, right?
Well, a little south
Of San Fernando, in Trinidad, influenced your musical style and compositions?
I think from a very, very young age, as far back as I can remember, um, music was always part of our home.
Mm-hmm.
Back then, we had what you call a radiogram. Lots of the kids now wouldn't know what a radiogram
Right.
is, but we had a radiogram,
Right.
and
Maybe you want to explain that in short
it's
form.
it's like a old stereo,
Right.
the original stereo.
Right.
There was an area where you would play records, and there was
Right.
an area where you could tune into the radio. So it was a
Right.
radiogram
Right.
kind of thing.
Right.
If your house didn't have a radiogram, you were poor.
Ah, okay.
I'm just saying that,
You're right.
right? But really, we had a radiogram, and on Sunday evenings there was a show on the radio called Hit Parade.
Mm-hmm.
Dave Elcock would be the person, the
Mm-hmm.
Dave Elcock Hit Parade, and he
Mm-hmm.
would play the top 10 or top 20 songs, I think,
Mm-hmm.
of the week.
Mm-hmm.
So you would hear a little bit of everything from Captain and Tennille to the Jackson Five to Aretha Franklin to Sparrow to Blakey, whatever was happening at the hot at the time, it would be on that show. So, of course, my sisters and I, we would push the furniture to the side and we would put on socks because you got to skate like James Brown and you got to dance like Michael Jackson
Right.
and you would sing along to the song. So from then, I sometimes tell my mom, Mommy, I song like Sparrow. Tell me the
Right.
truth. And I song like, she said, boy, behave yourself.
Right. Right.
But you would try to mimic your favorite artist on the radio. And that's what we did. So from then, it was always, music was part of my life. Um, then what happened growing up in Romaine, the community center before it was actually built was under my grandfather's house.
Oh,
Yeah,
that was convenient.
I know. So I would be this little boy sitting among grown men drumming, and they would put a old juicy, a juicy Trinidadian's old a juicy soft drink box,
Right.
the
Right.
wooden
Right.
ones,
Right.
and that's what I would
You'd
sit
sit
on,
on. Yeah.
and I would be drumming among these big men.
Right.
So people used to come to see this little 5-year-old boy drumming, and then eventually the community center was built,
Mm-hmm.
and of course my mother wouldn't let me go out the street to be out there at the community
Mm-hmm.
center.
Mm-hmm.
When it was downstairs my grandfather's house, it was all well and good.
Mm-hmm.
So I think from there it was just fascinated with the whole idea of rhythms and music and melodies and all that stuff. So
Can you share more about your experience performing with the Coast Guard during that time?
um, being in the Coast Guard was a period in my life that I would never forget. It was 6 wonderful years of camaraderie and just learning because you join a job when you're a child.
Mm-hmm.
I just came out of my teens,
Mm-hmm.
and looking back now, we realize, boy, you were a baby,
Mm-hmm.
you know.
What led you to that?
You need a job.
Got it.
You need a job.
Got
Now,
it.
from growing up, I was always in something I was in Boy Scouts.
Right.
I was in the cadets.
Right.
So it was almost like the natural
Naturals.
step to go into the military. So I joined the Coast Guard. Um, and it was a really wonderful period in my life.
Mm.
I always think about it and think about the great people that I met there. We're still friends 40 years after.
Mm-hmm.
We're still friends, and it's just. But in the Coast Guard, though, we formed a little band. It wasn't any major band. It was a little group.
Mm-hmm.
It didn't last very long,
Mm-hmm.
but we were very passionate about it, and we did it, and we sounded great. Actually, I think we sounded great.
Any recordings of that time
No,
done?
we were just a band that
Right.
they would call on when it was time for a performance. And then we'll do a rehearsal and hey,
Yeah.
yeah.
How did you navigate the legal challenges surrounding the authorship of Who Let the Dogs Out?
That was another period in my life that was crazy
Yeah.
because, after doing work, and I think every singer, every songwriter would like to see their work make it to the top of the charts, win a Grammy, or whatever.
Accolade that.
Yeah, that it would attract. So I was very excited about it. However, my lawyer at the time told me something. He said, Anslem, wherever there's a hit, there's a writ.
Mm.
So learn to deal with it. All you could do in the future is put things in place so that you don't relive it.
Mm-hmm.
It was a rough time seeing work that you've done
Mm-hmm.
being um, it was just a rough time seeing work that you've done and going up the ladder of fame and fortune, and then just as your ship is about to come into shore, the pirates just come on board.
Mm-hmm.
So your cargo never makes it to shore.
Mm-hmm.
So it was a rough time, but you learn. And as I always tell my son, I say, listen, life will throw punches at you, and life will knock you down.
Mm-hmm.
You got to make sure it doesn't knock you out.
Right.
You get up, you dust yourself, and you move on. You learn from your mistakes. Yeah.
Can you tell us about the process of composing and producing that Grammy Award winning Who Let the Dogs Out?
That was I remember living in Toronto, 1500 would drive to be exact.
Mm-hmm.
And my brother-in-law at the time, he would come to the house. And he was the one who would say, man, he would say, who let the dogs out?
Mm-hmm.
With a big voice. And he's one of those, what you call an influencer, radio personality,
Mm-hmm.
promoter. So he has this personality about him.
Mm-hmm.
Who let the dogs out? He'd come to the house like, Jesus, Lord, man.
Mm-hmm.
He'd say, man, you got to write a calypso, a soca about that. I said, that wouldn't work.
Uh-huh.
It's too American. It wouldn't work. He said, trust me, it will work. It will work. And he did this for, I would think, almost a year. And one day I said, you know what? Let me just write the damn song.
Right.
So I sat down and I started writing. And there were actually two versions of the song. One I don't care to share
Right.
because it's really dealing with a woman putting her clothes on the line and the dog pulling it down.
Right.
You know,
Okay.
and she's coming home and arguing about who let the dogs out.
Right.
And I said, that's kind of corny.
Uh-huh.
And right around that time, there was a word, I think it originated in Jamaica, I'm not sure, where men were calling women skettle.
I've never heard
Yeah, it's supposed to be a derogatory word,
that.
where a skettle is supposed to be a quote unquote bad girl.
Mm-hmm.
So men would call women, you're skettle,
Mm-hmm.
you're skettle.
Mm-hmm.
And around that time, the year before, I had a song saying, skettle, don't call me that. Skettle, don't call me that. So I was like, okay. So I wrote the second take on Who Let the Dogs Out was really about women calling men dogs.
Mm.
Because if you listen to the lyric, it says, last year in the dance, you had a ball. You called me Millibug and Skettle. Get back, Fluffy, mash Fluffy. Get back, you flea-infested mongrel. Who let the dogs out?
Right.
So it's really a man-bashing song.
Right.
So that is where the whole juice came from.
That's interesting. What inspired you to explore different genres, the neo soul, pop, etc., throughout, your career?
I think we got to go back to the original question,
Right.
because I was so heavily influenced by so many people.
Mm-hmm.
Listening to Roberta Flack,
Mm-hmm.
listening to James Ingram, what's his name? One of my favorite singers. He and his wife would sing. If you think you're lonely now.
Yes.
My God. Yeah, but these were people who influenced me a lot growing up, and I just thought it just came natural. It just came natural.
Your voice lends to that combination of music. Really, really does, in the jazz and the stuff that hits your heart.
Yeah.
Not the boom boom ba bam bam. But even though you've done it, your voice has a really beautiful appeal.
Okay.
It really hits in a certain way. Anyway.
Yeah.
How do you balance staying true to your artistic vision while catering to the commercial demands of the music industry?
I think they work hand in hand. If you're true to yourself, the old cliche, do what you love and the money will come.
Mm-hmm.
So if you stay true to yourself and true to the music, I always walk around thinking, the hit songs just floating around in the air, you know.
Mm-hmm.
Because you don't really, yeah, you sit and you write a song, but you don't really write the song. You put your ideas on paper.
Mm-hmm.
And yes, that equates to writing.
Mm-hmm.
But understand what I'm trying to say here.
Mm-hmm.
It's there.
Mm-hmm.
It's there. It's just give me a nice word for that. You know, it's just floating around in the atmosphere. And it comes to you. Melody, lyric. Sometimes a lyric come with no melody, some melody come with no lyric. And you just take that and you start putting it on paper.
Right.
But you didn't really, yeah, they
Sort
say
of
you,
floating around in the universe and you just capture it.
yeah, it's, you know, we say you created it, but that's kind of pompous to say that you created it because
Mhm.
to me it's there.
Mm-hmm.
It's there. You were just the vessel through which it came,
Mm-hmm.
but it was there.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and
Mhm.
if you could just open up yourself and let it come, then it will come. You know, so
Are there specific artists or musicians who have, I mean, you mentioned them a little while ago,
mhm.
that have had a significant influence on your musical style and career?
I think for the smooth jazz and R&B, I would say people like Luther,
Mm-hmm.
James Ingram, you know, Bobby Womack. That's the name I was trying to remember.
Mm-hmm.
Bobby Womack, you know, that era, Sam
Mm-hmm.
Cooke,
Mm-hmm.
that era, you
Mhm.
know. And I think when it comes to soca and calypso, it would be people like an artist that I really loved was Blakey.
Mm-hmm.
You know, Blakey had this rude boy. You better like me just the way I am.
Yes.
You know, yeah, he had that
Yes.
laugh, you know. Blakey had a style of his own, you know. So yes, we love Shadow and we love Sparrow and we love Kitchener. You know, I love all of them.
Yeah.
But something about Blakey with his shirt open and the hair slick,
Uh-huh.
you know, he just had this kind of like the thing was a Bajan too. I met
Yeah.
him once
Yeah.
actually.
Yeah.
I was privileged, you know, to meet him once
Yeah.
at the Naparima Bowl in San Fernando.
Uh-huh.
Came up to me, say, you the fellow who making all that noise, boy. You the
Uh-huh.
fellow making all that noise. I say, yes, Mr. Blakey.
Yeah.
You know.
I think the WAD is doing something on him.
Yes.
Yes.
He was just, you know, I mean, the list goes on and on.
Mm-hmm.
People who really influence
Mm-hmm.
you. Because sometimes you don't even realize somebody's having an impact on your creative juice,
Mm-hmm.
but it's there, you know. So
So, what advice would you give to aspiring musicians and composers looking to make their way in this present music industry?
first make sure that this is your calling.
Mm-hmm.
Don't just do it because you want to eat a food.
Mm-hmm.
You know, it's a term that has become very popular now. I want to eat a food. So you're not doing it for the right reasons.
Mm-hmm.
You know, if this is your calling, make sure this is why when you were created, when you were conceived in your mother's womb, this is what you were created to do.
Mm-hmm.
Because as I always say, this is a calling. This is not, this is a ministry.
Mm-hmm.
This is a ministry,
Mm-hmm.
and you could affect people and influence people for good or bad.
Mm-hmm. So, what has been the most memorable moment or highlight of your musical journey so far?
That moment driving down the highway in Trinidad when a good friend of mine, Martin Raymond Martin, nicknamed Mice, called me and said, "Yo, who let the dogs on won the Grammy?" I am usually, I see I'm usually very flatline.
Right.
You know, somebody's getting married, I say, hey, congratulations.
Yeah.
Somebody died, I say, oh, accept my condolences.
Yeah.
But I had to come out of the car that day and just scream on the highway
Right.
because to know that something came from an idea,
Yeah.
a seed that was planted in my head, of course, by my ex-brother-in-law,
Right.
but to build on that and work on it and see it become something that the whole world is dancing to.
Right.
And you know, now we're looking at 26 years later, little children are still saying, "Who let the dogs out?"
Yeah.
You know, I think that moment was That
What
did it
is
all.
your was he your cousin or your friend who kept saying you got to do it? What does he think?
My
Your
brother-in-law.
brother-in-law.
Um, shortly after that, he would say, "See what I told you? See what I told you?" That's his
That's
voice. See what I told you?
that's what I figured.
Yeah.
Again, my dear audience, this episode is brought to you by Mr. J. Andre Levogue, our Consul General of Trinidad and Tobago, NYC. So please check out our donate page on our website. Like, follow, subscribe, share, drop a comment on our YT page at On the Call Podcast 20. And so we're now in our second part of this whole shenanigans that we're doing here. What are you most proud of in your career in life?
Um, I think versatility because I think I was blessed and you know with the ability to do calypso, soca, smooth jazz, and now I'm an author, a published author.
What's the
So
name of the book?
The Adventures of Spin and Scratch. That's just one of them.
Tell us a little bit about that.
The Adventures of Spin and Scratch it's a children's book,
All right.
and the idea came from I drove down from Toronto to come visit my mom because she was here in the US for a little while and she was going back home. And when people come to the US for a little trip and they're going back home, it's barrels, it's just stuff.
Yes.
So I'm telling her, I said, lady, don't take none of these New York mice back to Trinidad. As I said that, like a light just went on in my head. And so half of my brain is having a conversation with my mom, but the other half is writing,
Yeah.
working on this story.
Yeah.
So the story now, coming to the story is about this woman who came to the US and worked as a nanny for a very affluent family. And she worked for 40 years. She raised their children, their grandchildren, and everything. And she never went back home to Trinidad. Came to the US when she was a young woman, early 20s, 21, 22. And now she's in her 60s. So during that period, the regular typical story where you save your money and you build a beautiful home back in Trinidad. So when it's time for retirement, you'll go back home.
Right.
When your bones can't take the cold anymore.
Right.
Right? So she's relating to her best friend, a Jamaican woman who is significantly younger than her. That, it's time for me to go home because I haven't been home in 40 something years. Unknowing to her, there's a family of mice living in the walls of her Brooklyn apartment. A mother mouse and her two sons spin and scratch. So the mother mouse overheard this conversation. Why are you laughing? This is serious business here now, right? So the mother mouse overheard this conversation and went into a state of panic and told her two sons, disturb their martial arts practice. And stop. As you need to stop. So disturbed their martial arts practice and told them, listen, Auntie Ruby, that's her name, affectionately called Auntie Ruby, is going back to Trinidad. And if she's gone, I don't know how I'm going to support you guys. So she came up with this amazing plan. And when Auntie Ruby was packing, when it got to that period where she was ready to leave, she hid them in the toe portion of one of Auntie Ruby's shoes. And lo and behold, these two American mice ended up in Trinidad. And that's where the adventure began. And in short.
I love it.
Okay.
I love it.
Okay.
Now, is there anything different that you've learned about yourself since 2020?
Since 2020.
And we know what happened in 2020. Many things have shifted.
I've learned so much about myself because the pandemic gave everyone an opportunity to take an introspective look, to spend time with yourself. A lot of people was going crazy because a lot of people, they've been everywhere, they haven't been to themselves, and getting the opportunity to be with you, by you, in you, and understand you, I think that was so amazing for me. Just, I've always spent a lot of time by myself, but during the pandemic, I really got into me and realized that, my strengths, my weaknesses, and I kind of like being by myself now. Yeah.
Okay. What maybe 2 things that people don't know about you.
That I'm mushy. I'm into poetry and stuff, you know. Once you hear a man is into
Nice.
poetry, it's like, oh,
That's romantic.
well, some people think that's mushy.
Eh.
You know, I like poetry. I write.
Mm.
You know, if I go to an office, the doctor's office or lawyer's office, and I'm sitting in the lobby,
Mhm.
when everyone will reach for a magazine and start reading,
Mhm.
I would start writing on my phone.
Mhm.
I love to write.
Mhm.
I'm always writing something. There's something going on in this crazy head of mine, even as we speak now.
Mhm.
You know, so that's something that people don't know about me. I love to write. I'm mushy, and I if I had a lot of money, like
Mhm.
a lot of money,
Mhm.
I'd probably have about 16 kids.
Whoa. Okay. You love kids.
Probably one woman might be able to bring all that into the world, but
Right.
I when you look at children, it's so you see yourself in them,
Mhm.
and I think what happens a lot of times we get big too quick. We grow up too
Mhm.
quickly,
Mhm.
and we forget what it was to be a child. If you
Mhm.
remember your childhood, if you could just see the world from a child, how they see it, it's
Mhm.
an amazing place to look at it
Mhm.
because the innocence,
Mhm.
the
Creativity.
purity, the
Mhm.
creativity. Children will just take something and create something out of
Mhm.
nothing,
Mhm.
you know. And I
Mhm.
think we unlearn that,
Mhm.
you know.
Mhm.
So I think, yeah, I would do children, have 25 children if we could. Yeah.
How do you handle criticism and feedback from both fans and industry professionals?
I'm learning to deal with that
Mhm.
because after searching myself, I get to realize sometimes I could get very defensive very quickly
Mhm.
about my art, about my creativity, and I am learning that you don't do what you do for yourself. Else, I would sing in my bathroom.
Correct.
I do it for you, and if
Mhm.
you say, you know what, you could have,
Mhm.
but you have to know, as my mother would say, you have to pick sense out of nonsense
Mhm.
because
Mhm.
if I play a song for 10 people will have different
Mhm.
opinions.
Mhm.
So you got to be sure about what you know, but still listen to what everyone else say. You know, so I'm learning that about myself that I cannot be too defensive about someone else's opinion about your work because that's who you make it for.
How do you stay motivated and inspired creatively, especially during challenging times?
Um, I like the word motivated and motivation because, as I said, it's not so much. There's a period in every writer's life where you just go blank,
Mm-hmm.
you know, and just leave it alone.
Mm-hmm.
Don't even try to. Don't force it. If it don't fit, don't force it.
Mm-hmm.
You know, just wait and it will come. It's there. It's there.
Sometimes you have to kind of shift, do something
Yeah, shift your
else, go
focus on
somewhere
other
else.
things. Do other things. You know,
Mm-hmm.
don't just try to. God, I want to get this. No, leave it
Mm-hmm.
alone. Leave it alone. If it don't fit, don't force it.
Mm-hmm.
It will come. So you just find your center, stay keel, as we say in keep it keel,
Right,
and it will come. It
right.
will come.
Can you share any upcoming projects or collaborations that you're excited about?
Well, for one, I'm excited about my new band
Mm-hmm.
that's coming. AD and the Band. That's the name of the
Mm-hmm.
band. AD and the Band.
Okay.
Um, it's a four-piece unit,
Mm-hmm.
four playing members plus myself.
Mm-hmm.
And our intention is to um, our target audience is an audience who is ready to listen to good music again, who wants to sit and be entertained. You know, I have no problem with people twerking and kicking up your leg and doing what you do. I just want to do it different for a different audience
Mm-hmm.
who would appreciate my music, my 30 something years of music,
Mm-hmm.
both the smooth jazz, the soca, the calypso, the R&B. I'm going to bring all that together in a concert type environment.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and we're not catering for 20,000 people.
Mm-hmm.
We're catering for
Intimacy.
500 people,
Mm-hmm.
up close and personal,
Mm-hmm.
where you can touch me,
Mm-hmm.
you know,
Mm-hmm.
close enough to touch. That's what we
Mm-hmm.
want, you know. And then there is my book
Right.
that is now being, give me a fancy word for it, that is now getting an animation adaptation.
Really?
Yes.
Lovely.
Yes. So we're working on that.
Lovely.
It's when I say working on it, we're in the process of making this a reality.
Right.
So by the end of this year, God willing, God
Yes.
sparing life,
Yes.
we should be able to take in a full series, 13 episodes of The Adventures of Spin and Scratch, the relocation.
I
animation.
can't wait.
Yeah,
I can't
it's gonna
wait.
be
That
fun.
is
Yeah.
fun.
So we're working on that now.
How do you want your music to be remembered? You know, what kind of impact do you hope to make with your artistry when you look back or in the end?
If anyone's been following my career, they would realize that I'm a storyteller. You know, and every story I tell, there's somebody out there who could relate to it. So I tell my stories and I tell your stories. I just tell it in music, you know. So even when you listen to the bacchanal music I did back in the day, jump and mash up the party, ragga, pum pum, and all that stuff. Who let the dogs out? It's a story. It's about women telling, you know.
Yes.
I'm a storyteller and I want people to remember me and remember my music as being informative and
topical
and inspirational also.
Anslem, thank you very much for sharing and for your invaluable time and for being on the Inside the Call, our after show that's coming up next for those members those people, part of my audience who become members. Thank you very much. My audience also thank you very much for spending your valuable time with us today. And please like, follow, subscribe, share, drop a comment, support us. We're grateful. We're really grateful. Thank you to Cheese and the OTC team. Please send us your thoughts. Comment on our YouTube page, our IG page. Care to share. And remember, when you're on your beat, stay on the sunny, sunny side of the street. Safely be health conscious and kind to one another. And don't forget to give thanks for the little and big gifts while striving to live that beautiful life. Till the next. Thank you, Ansam.
You're welcome. Bye-bye.